Testing 1 2. Testing 1 2. Testing 1 2. Testing 1 2. Audio sounds strong tonight. Now, I'm glad everybody came back and we're tuning in. Well, I told you I was going to do that. I was going to come back with my yak. And absolutely, well, not a whole bunch left, but, been sipping while I've been doing a little bit of research. And it's, believe it or not, it's actually one that I got probably a couple months ago. And it is literally my favorite liqueur to drink. Well, actually, it's whiskey or whatever, scotch. And it's Johnny Walker Blue Label. I absolutely love it. Now, I don't like spending money on it because it is what it is, but that's what I'm drinking tonight because it was actually a gift. Now, not going to keep you here longer than necessary because it's already, I want to say it's 1 a.m. my time, so that means it's 3 a.m. on the East Coast. So, not sure if you had an opportunity to check out the title, but it's Your Word versus the Badge and Witness Credibility in Court. Now, the biggest challenge most of us know because, again, if you know, you know. But challenging police officer credibility in court and understanding how courts evaluate witness truthfulness. Now, I'm definitely the one that constantly says, hey, get the Jiggly information. Make sure you're doing a detailed discovery. I say that constantly. Nobody knows what it is. And a lot of people just, when they don't get discovery, they just accept whatever the prosecution decides they're going to give them. And they're like, okay, yeah, I got discovery. And then I'll ask them, did you get everything on the list that I told you to get? No. Okay. Well, what happened? Well, I lost my case. Why? Oh, well, my attorney didn't object to this. And so he didn't do what I told you that was necessary for them to do. And you're okay with that. And again, it's one of those because, again, I speak about this all the time. G.I. Joe spoke about knowing is half the battle. I'm giving you all this extra information because I want you to understand not only the nature of the beast, but how the beast operates. Now, this is what happens when it's your word against the police officers. Now, quoting Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. Your strategy must be smarter than that in the uniform. In court, every move is about credibility. And this is why you challenge it. You challenge the court's credibility. You challenge the credibility of the police officer. You challenge the credibility of the evidence. You challenge the credibility of their knowledge of law. You challenge everything. Because what happens is you got to, again, the Tommy Sotomayor question. Prosecutor who doesn't care. Police officer who doesn't know law. And the judge is just there for most reasons. And then you have the defense attorney who doesn't defend. That is our judicial system. And when I said Tommy Sotomayor asked the question, no one had an answer that was actually accepted. Not that they didn't have a correct answer. That was an answer that was not readily accepted. Now, even with this, not knowing what it is that you're going up against and just walking in and be like, well, I got the truth. Well, the truth is not where the courtroom is. The courtroom and the law is not about the truth. It's about the law, period. And if you're not pushing the law in a way it can be understood to the simplest person because you don't understand how it actually works, you are one of those naive people that can be hurt badly by the law. Now, everyone, citizen or officer, is technically equal in the eyes of the law, but jurors and judges often give officers presumed credibility. Why? Because we've been taught that the person wearing the uniform is a good person. We've been taught that the person wearing the uniform is an honest person. We've been taught that the decisions that these people make are correct. Now, you come to my channel. You've been taught that these are not smart people at all. And the Supreme Court agrees. Why? Jordan v. City of New London. And then I tell you, these people don't know law. And then you look at Georgia, Alabama, and I want to say Tennessee, 6 weeks of training when it takes someone 7 years just to have an opportunity to take a test to become a lawyer or an attorney. Because one learned in law versus someone that's trained to do what? How can you enforce something that you have no idea what it is? So understanding these are the things that I'm teaching you, and it's contradictory to what you were brought up on. Because again, this is I actually used the term the red pill version of the legal system, because you've been taught one way, and in fact, the legal system doesn't work the way that you've been taught. And this is why a lot of people reject the things that I say, or they actually start calling me names instead of saying what I am saying is incorrect and then showing you what is correct. Because everything I'm giving you is coming out of books. These things are coming from a source where you can actually readily find them. Now, factors courts consider in witness credibility. Your demeanor. Now, this is why there is witness preparation or coaching, because it gives you a means of, if you're fidgety, if you got your head down, if you can't look someone in the eye, little basic things and body language actually turns off or actually considers you to be a liar. Because if I ask you a question and you look away, or you actually deflect on the question, you appear to be untruthful. Your credibility is trash. And this is the same with a police officer. If you start to stutter when you're asked a question, your credibility is trash. So always understand your demeanor when you're testifying and you're in front of that jury has a bearing on what goes on. If you're angry and you're coming, because this is one of the things I hate, this is one of the reasons why I hated doing live shows, because the passion would come out because I lacked a lot of that self-discipline and self-control to actually do live shows, because I'll be speaking about something and my silly ass will look over here at the comments, and then all of a sudden I'm the angry black guy. And then I lose all credibility about what I'm saying, because now I'm not speaking about fact, I'm speaking about stuff that's in my heart versus reading off the documents. Because again, you hear how mechanical I sound at times, because I am reading what I wrote down. Because if I don't, I'm going to go all over the place, and then it'll be a whole month before I come back to the actual subject. This way, I actually get to stay on subject, stay on point, and keep going while I'm giving you this information. Now, the second part of this will be consistency with other evidence. Now, just like I give you these, I've been dropping these breadcrumbs for years, and now I'm giving you consistency where all these breadcrumbs are now lining up to make sense. And this is what's done even during a trial. They might drop evidence here, here, and now you tie it all in together to where it makes sense. Some people do it in their closing. Others do it during trial. Even when there's a disconnect in the evidence and you're challenging the consistency of that evidence layout, it can be done during trial. It's done on defense, it's done on offense, but you also have to understand when to do it, and it's strategic and it's purposeful. Let's put it that way too. Now, your credibility is based on bias, motive, or interest in the outcome. Now, why is that? Now, you shifting there, not necessarily from the jurors, but you're interested in the outcome because you're a judge, because certain outcomes are beneficial to you, while others are not so much. Jurors, you're investing in the outcome because you might have a book deal that you're working on. There's always something that you always have to understand. Even again in my trial, my experience, I experienced Courtney Johnson. We were, it was it was one of those where we actually got indicted during the trial, which was the most amazing thing I'd ever seen in my life. We were literally sitting at the table, and they would hand us papers. We would just hand them back because, like, what are we doing? I'm not agreeing to anything that y'all handed me. So the last one, probably the seventh or eighth one, it was a lot of them. I want to say seven because we most of that trial flew, kind of was flowing with numbers. And anybody that understands the Masonic patterns and you understand numerology and the numbers in their realm, that's how that trial went. So I want to say it was seven. The seventh time, my brother, we passed it back. My brother goes, "Hold on, I want that." So he gets it back from the bailiff and he signs it. And I said, "You idiot, what are you doing?" He points down at it. Now, I've often said this before. My brother he's not one of the sharpest knives in the drawer. However, when he has an idea and he puts that idea into execution, generally it is an absolute home run. So when he points down at the paper, it was an absolute home run because it opened the door for what we needed. Now, up until that point, because I'm gonna give you something. Up until that point, it was obvious the bias was ridiculous. It was oh my God, it was so slanted it wasn't even funny. So when we filled out the paper, I actually signed my actual name because I was not indicted under my actual name. So when I pass it back, the judge goes, "Who is this person?" Again, I'm sitting first chair. My brother's attorney turns around and looks at me, and it was a standing, to fold my jacket over and then tuck it. It was the fold and tuck day. And I said, "I apologize for that because you've been showing bias through this entire trial. You forged our names on several documents without our consent or even authority to act in our behalf. Now, I was able to do that because we signed it. And she reacted because the person that they were indicting was not the person that was sitting at the table. Mine, I had a completely different name. And then when she goes, "When did you change your name?" I said, "My name was changed in 2008. And she goes, "Well, who changed it?" I said, "Your boss." I said, that's who I was eating lunch with because every Wednesday we would meet because literally the person that's not supposed to be, I'm anti-government. I don't like police. I don't like judges. I was eating lunch every Wednesday with a judge, a head judge at that, because we would read books. Literally, we actually started because whenever I was doing my name change, the book, The Lincoln Lawyer, was on his desk and he was only maybe 3 chapters in. And I kind of laughed and I told him, I said, "You will enjoy it, but I don't think the movie's going to live up to it." And the movie did not live up to the book, but the movie was still good. However, that's the book that started it. And he was actually surprised of some of the books that he had that I had already read. So a lot of times what we did, we had to find books that I had not read. And we would then read during the week, and then we'd meet up every Wednesday for lunch. But again, it was the illustration that was open from an opportunity that my brother saw for illustrating the bias that been displayed during our trial. Now, after that was aired out, we won 4 of the next 5 motions. 3 of them we should not have won because I just objected just because. And for us to win them, it was one of those things that showed an overcorrection. Because again, they were operating from a place where they expected someone not to know their procedures and not to understand how to pick voir dire, not to understand how to ask questions properly, not to even understand. I understood how to lead them into questions. Like I had already sat down with them. And the whole point was I didn't go from anything other than what they said. I was doing the art of listening, the thing that I've actually spoken about several times and done a video on. And it's one of those where it's easier to figure out and maneuver through when they have not done their homework in studying their adversary, when I had did the studying of them. Now, the next part is doing this because, again, I brought this up during the trial by listening to them and also having these documents in front of us. The prior inconsistent statements, because you know if you watch the video, I want to say from last week, where I spoke about a police officer showing guilt because they're having an inconsistency in their statements or having multiple police reports, because that shows a consciousness of guilt because they know they're lying or not being truthful. Now, impeachment for cross-examination. Now, that's the hairline, because just like the way I teach now, it is difficult to snatch someone to the other side, make them honestly just start following you and believe in everything you're doing. Because again, everything they're doing and listening to is going contrary to what they were taught. And if it goes directly to human nature, where no one wants to admit that they were wrong. So when you push them into a corner and you do this too fast, and you rip the band-aids off, they don't like you for exposing their ignorance for the most part. And generally, it's not their fault. It's the fact that their eyes were still closed and you're opening them, and it's like you're opening them and shining the light into it. It hurts. It's one of those things that no one wants to admit. And if you impeach a person and it's to a point to where it's too harsh, especially in this sensitive day and age, it can be detrimental to your case. And it can also be something where they now, just because they don't like you, they don't trust you and they don't believe you. So again, now you have to understand how to use, I hate to use kid gloves, but you have to use a manner of finesse. And again, one of the things I did, I let them admit that they had lied. All I did was just ask questions and wait for answers. And then here's the thing, because I also love doing this too. It's most people don't realize they've said something stupid until you either have them repeat it or they hear it back. It's because okay, let me make sure I understand this, because just like, give you a great example. I looked really bad because the person before, I believe Eric had taken the deal for 5 years and he's being cross-examined. And they asked, do you have any questions for this witness? I said, well, I have one. And it actually, the one question I had was part of a series of questions. The one question was, you took a deal and you didn't commit a crime. Why was that? Now, that wasn't the initial start to it. I started off with based on your testimony because he came off as very credible. Based on your testimony, you're here because you made a phone call and then you would blah, 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 blah. And then I ended with the question that I stated. And he then, because he didn't realize what he was saying, he took a deal for 5 years and he didn't commit a crime. And when he agreed to that out loud, he now gave me credibility because he accepted what he said. Because again, he's going to say that I committed a crime. Well, what crime was that? And again, because he came off credible, I allowed him to stay credible by admitting he had made a mistake because he did not commit a crime. His fear allowed him to take a deal that he should not have taken. But again, that allowed me to stay credible because had I gone out there and just attacked him simply because we could have lost that case. Now, the problem of presumed truth, the halo effect is simply the belief that all officers are honest. Now, again, that is what's hammered into you in every aspect of life, unless you got dark skin. So a lot of times you're not going to have the luxury of having your actual peers judge you. So those that are sitting up there are more inclined to believe any and everything a police officer is saying. Now, you look at wrongful convictions. 65% of people that are on death row that are coming home are there because of wrongful convictions. You're looking at a jogger in New York. I think he spent 23 years in jail because he was literally a doctor. I think he was a doctor. And he went for a morning jog. Just that morning, a police officer grabbed him. They were looking for a dude in a white jogging suit. Or a dark jogging suit. This doctor was wearing a white one. So he was basically glowing in the dark. But he's supposed to have robbed somebody with a dark jogging suit on and then changed into a white one. So you look at wrongful conviction. Hell, look at the Central Park 5. They were in jail because 14, 15, and 16-year-olds was interrogated for 17 hours. And it was accepted as okay. Because again, a 14-year-old child, it's okay to keep him and lie to him in a box for 17 hours, making him sleep deprived. It's okay to do that with a 15-year-old. It's okay to do that with a 16-year-old. Constantly lie to them and then tell them things. So then when you find out that you have the DNA from someone else who then confesses once they find out you have DNA, you still keep these kids in jail. Yes, I pause for dramatic effect because I want you to understand that. Because again, the one thing that the state will not do is apologize for a wrongful conviction. Because it's about revenue generation. And if they admit that they're wrong or they admit to some sort of negligence, they then have to compensate you for their negligence. So they're not going to readily do that. Now, a notable quote from a federal court. An officer's badge does not shield him from cross-examination. This is why I tell you, get the Giglio information, get the Brady information. You not only have to go after their credibility, but you also have to understand how to weaponize it and actually use it. Because just having the tool means nothing if you don't know how it works. Like, great example. I've had webcasts for probably, 5 years? You could actually look at videos like literally since the pandemic, and I've been using it. I've never used it to this extent, and then I'm using it constantly now, and I'm like, hold on, it can do that? it can do that. And then I go back and look at old videos, and it's like, I've been had this power this entire time. So it's like having all the pieces to the puzzle and not knowing how to put the puzzle together. I have all the tools and pieces to the game, have no idea how to play it. That again goes to chess. I can give you all the pieces to both sides. That does not mean you understand the strategy and how to put it together to win. All of this is part of piecing these things together, because it's not something that's going to happen overnight, not going to happen in a week, not going to happen in a month. If you're actually out here searching, you are going to have to spend time. And even the context of mastering. It takes 1,000 hours to become good at something. It takes 10,000 hours to master something. Now, when you're looking at this, if you've actually been watching my videos, as I've gone along, I've been getting better and better and better and better, because again, I'm learning how to master different aspects of this one thing. And then even with this, going with law, spending the 10,000 hours necessary to master it, I'm understanding how to put I got all the ingredients to the cake. Now I'm trying to show you how to bake your cake. Because now, again, all the stuff that I've been telling you, I've been giving you all the ingredients one by one, telling you the measurements one by one. Now let's put it all together. Because that's what this is. I don't only tell you that there's an opportunity. I show you there's an opportunity for you to be compensated for the things that are done to you that are not lawful. Because even the mention of the case Floyd v. City of New York, which is stop and frisk abuses, how officers' testimony was discredited through data. And even in Rudy, because most people have no idea, Rudy Giuliani, I hate to say initiated, he was the one who kicked it off. Even when Bloomberg came in office and he spoke about it, New York was already $2 billion backwards because of the stop and frisk episodes and lawsuits. And that was because they had just started sending people checks and having them sign for it. Because once you cash that check, that was it. You can't get any more money. Even with that, the stop and frisk arrests were illegal. But then when you're talking about the officers, the data did not support the things that they were saying. Even with, like I used the example of myself earlier in a previous video where I spoke about habit evidence. I've never consented, ever. I'm talking about like from a little kid. Because that was the one thing my father always told me. You don't consent to nothing. The one thing I taught my kids, because I actually believe my youngest son's first words, I do not consent. Because when he used to say it to me, I wanted to punch him in his face. Like, because he would say it constantly. I do not consent. I do not consent. I do not consent. Because you can't misconstrue that. Now, I don't care because I run a dictatorship in my house. But this little person would tell me I do not consent constantly, and it got on my nerves. But it was part of his training. That's how I was raising him. No, you don't get involved in adult conversations, and you don't consent to nothing. Because you can't, because you're a child. You can't consent to anything. And that was the one thing I forced. I forced it onto my children. Now, they used it to an extent until they got grown. And then, things happen. They do what they want to do. Because, again, they're grown. I'm still there if they need me. But it is one of those things that I implanted in them or instilled in them at an early age. Now, strategies to challenge the officer's credibility. Rub hands like Birdman. Hold on. As a matter of fact, I'm going to take a sip of this Blue Label. Yeah, you see it. Woo! Now, cross-examination tactics. Ask clear, simple, yes or no questions. Now, when you're doing that, make sure they answer yes or no. Say that one more time. Make sure they are answered yes or no. Example, you spoke about a warrant you have. Yes. Where did you get the warrant from? Oh, I got the warrant from such and such. Is there a copy in discovery? Oh, I don't know. I was like, what do you recognize who signed it, blah, blah, blah? No. These things, you want to make sure they're concise, but you're also tying them to a specific time and order. And make sure you lock their testimony in early. Then contrast it later with body cam or even their police reports. Make sure you're asking them these questions they're called tie-down questions. Now, police report discrepancies. If there are multiple police reports, there's going to be discrepancies. Why? Because they're going to try to change things that don't sound right because police officers use stock language when they're filling out a report. Police officers are not designed to tell the truth, which is why they can't articulate most of the stuff that they're going through. Now, print out inconsistencies between initial report and testimony. This is where the art of listening comes in. You have to be diligent in your listening because even in the instance of listening, you have to be ready to respond if necessary. Because if you do not object and if you want the judge to make a ruling that you can appeal, you have to be able to listen and respond actively. So keep that in mind. Now you'll also do this by making points of missing details, embellishments, which will be exaggerations or contradictions with video and audio evidence. All of these are done through paying attention. And this is one of those things I myself had to train myself to do because the biggest thing, because I even have another channel that I'm on every now and again, it's called Energy Mover. Because I hate to say it, I have a hyper disorder, to say it lightly, or ADHD. Now, what happens is when you have ADHD, that just means you lack focus and discipline. So when my brother noticed it, because he's very astute when it comes to little simple stuff like that, because he's very observant. So whenever I was doing something, he goes, "Hey, I need you to come when we get to the house. We're going to go and sit down. I want to show you something." What he showed me was how to sit quietly. He showed me how to meditate. And I think that was the beginning of me learning self-discipline, self-awareness, because that's where this comes into. Because even when we're talking about the minute details of an audio and video discrepancy, just great example. I had a stop one night. Police officers, before anything actually happened, police officers goes, "You changed lane without putting on your turn signal." I was like, "It's possible. It's possible I did. Don't care, but it's possible." So when we're going through the motions of everything, she tells me, "Okay, well, you can go ahead and go. There was no citation, was nothing, whatever. So we rolled. On Valentine's Day, I believe it was either 2023 or 2024, my homeboy gives me a letter. He goes, hey, this came to my house. Like, your house? Like, why? And I was like, oh, because I've used your address a couple times. So yeah, he said, yeah, this came to the house. And it was a warrant for my arrest. And I was like, what the hell do I have a warrant for? So I'm looking on that, improper lane change. So I'm cracking up. So again, it's Valentine's Day. The next day, February 15th, I go down to the courthouse. And I tell them, hey, I need another court date. I don't miss court. And they was like, well, you know, this, that, whatever. I don't care nothing about all that. I'm not sitting in jail. Give me another court date. Because the one thing I want to do is go to court. So when the judge, but again, I have everything I need because it's just the warrant. Has the warrant number on it. Has, you know, all the other stuff. The court case, all that. So I'm prepared. So when the judge goes, okay, well, here's your new court date. I go to hand. I said, here you go. He puts his hands behind his back. Why did he do that? Because he understood once he accepted that paperwork, it was considered filed. And then he becomes responsible for the paperwork I'm filing. So he actually sends me over to the DA's office, blah, blah, blah. They were like, well, this is highly irregular. Cool, don't care nothing about it. So I informed her, look, do I need to bring them straight to you or do I need to take them to the courthouse? I said, because I just left the court. They told me to come straight to you. And she goes, well, what else are you going to file? I said, well, I'm going to file 3 motions. One of them is going to be a motion for sanctions. One of them is going to be a motion to dismiss. I said, the other one's going to be a motion to compel because you're not going to give me discovery. And she looks at me. She goes, what the? I said, yeah, I don't really have a lot of time, so I'm not going to keep coming down here. So she says, okay, I'll let you know. Literally, by the time I leave her office and get to the restaurant, there's a phone call. Hey, we got your discovery ready. I said, okay, I'll be back there in the morning. So next morning I'm there, and I'm looking at the video because I requested body cam video. And I cracked up laughing because, to my surprise, I did turn on my turn signal. I said, but I told him, I said, here's the thing. I said, based on Texas guidelines for body camera, either I was targeted, and the video will show that, or it's going to turn on within 30 seconds of my stop. And it's not going to be any evidence on there other than the stop. And he goes, how did you figure? I said, again, based on Texas guidelines for body cameras or dash cams, that's what you're going to see. So again, not saying much. As soon as it comes on, she's making a turn, and I crack up laughing. He goes, what's funny now? He said, you've been over there 2 seconds. I said, this video just exonerated me because I was targeted. He goes, why do you say that? I said, look where she's at. And I showed him the police report. She stopped me here. That's a full mile, so that's more than 30 seconds. And he takes a deep breath. And then I said, you ready for the next one? I said, because I think it was like 1 or 2 in the morning. I said, you see that light that's blinking? That's me changing lanes. And he takes another deep breath. I said, now, do I hand you this dismissal motion, or do we have to do this song and dance where I take everything that y'all got in here? So they end up giving me dismissal literally because it took a week because the judge didn't want to sign it. Because he literally did not want to sign the dismissal motion. Because I'm not paying you guys for anything. I'm not giving you any money. This revenue chase isn't money. I'm not sitting in jail because that's what you think is nice. But again, the challenging of the credibility of not only the police officer, because it showed that she lied in a police report because it was contradictory to the body camera. And I understood that. Why? Because I understood Texas requirements for body cameras and dash cameras whenever they're done and executed. So again, I noticed it as soon as she turned it on because it was only going to be one of two things. Either it was actually 30 seconds before the stop, which would have then made it to where you wouldn't have seen anything because I never changed lanes. Or I was targeted, which I was because a full minute and a half before I was pulled over, the body camera started. And then I changed lanes, I put on my turn signal. Who knew? Because I didn't even know they were behind me until they actually was pulling me over. But it was funny because it was one of those things where now anybody that goes up against this young lady, she has that on her record, that where she's lied previously. So always even understand that little contradictions are powerful in someone's credibility because again, like I told you, one lie destroys 1,000 truths. Now, again, the use of the contradictory officer description. Officer says he was aggressive, or it shows that he was calm and complacent, compliant. Use prior misconduct or disciplinary history. Again, that's the Giglio information, is a request for officer personnel files. This is their disciplinary file. This is civilian complaints. This is actual lawsuits they're involved in. However, they may ship you down to the federal building, but again, the federal building will send you to another place where you can type in this officer's name and it comes up because they have electronic access. These are the things that you do. You have a motion to compel Brady or Giglio material if the officer is known for having credibility issues. This is also why I put up bad officer, because most states do not maintain a Brady list. This is one of those things where they're actually not going to turn this over because this, what is that, North Carolina? It's a police officer. He is literally a problem officer. He's been cited for stalking people. He's been violent on multiple occasions. And then there was a violent arrest, I want to say, the end of last year, which at the beginning of the arrest, literally the first day of the arrest, everybody was talking about how the guy shouldn't have done this, the guy shouldn't have done that. On Reddit, which of all places, Reddit, a few of the people was like, that's such and such. His name isn't on the reports, isn't on the police reports. Why was that? Because they were trying to keep it off. The problem was there were people, bystanders, that was taking video, and they took video of that officer getting off of the suspect. He wasn't the arresting officer, and everybody left him off. Why? Because he is a bad cop. What happened? A week later, that young man is released from custody with no charges. Why? Because he was arrested by a bad officer with credibility issues. So that is why you're pushing for these detailed discoveries. And when your defense attorney doesn't defend you properly, this is why you hold their feet to a fire. This is why you do. I went blank, but I've given you that before, which makes the defense attorney your employee, because that's exactly that's why it's called ineffective assistance of counsel. It's not called ineffective counseling. It's ineffective assistance because you are the master of your own destiny. Now, other witnesses or physical evidence. Contradict officer's version with neutral or supporting civilian testimony. Now, that's the tricky part, because if you put their name on a document saying they're going to be a witness, you now have put a target on them. And again, like I tell you, it's always amazing to me how I did all these bad things, in my life, and nobody ever said, watch out for this guy, watch out for that guy. But when I started doing things such as protecting people in law, I had to watch out for the police. Because I thought the police were actually the good guys. Because I even spoke about whenever I worked in politics. I've done some crooked stuff. I've done some underhanded things and things of that nature and learned how the world works. But not one politician that owed me a favor for whatever reason, not one of them said, oh no, I'm not going to give you the, return the favor. I understood what to ask and how close and how far they were into a certain situation, which allowed me to use them as pawns on my chessboard. Because each and every one of them returned the favor. Whenever it got hot, they were like, hey, cash in your chips. Cash in. I owe you, so cash them in now because I can't be seen with you. I can't mess with you. So literally within hours, hey, I need this from you. Can you get this for me? Can you do this for me? Each and every one of them. Here you go, here you go, here you go. No questions asked, and we're done. And it was the most, I don't even understand. I can't even come up with a word for it. But even in that, it let me understand how politics truly worked. Not necessarily operated. I understood now how politics worked. So even going through all of that, you have to understand the using of this and how to place witnesses. Now, the easiest is having them sit there in court and use them as rebuttal witnesses. I'll get into that later, but again, it's understanding because everybody's tough with no resistance. Everybody's going to stand with you until somebody's coming against you. And I actually watched it. I watched it in my own family. Oh, the feds walk in here, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do. And as soon as the feds walked in there, they're like, yep, that's him. He did it. Don't know what it was he did, but he did it. I literally watched multiple people send themselves to ridiculous numbers of years on probation, send themselves to prison. Yes, send themselves to prison. And they didn't commit a crime at all. But because they were so afraid when them boys walked through the door that they didn't even want to fight. And like I told you, I actually did a video. There was a dude that got upset with me because he took a deal the day before trial. And then we won. He was sitting in the courtroom when we won. He got mad at me because we were going home. He was going to jail. You took the deal, not me. I believed everything I was saying. I stood on it. You didn't. And again, that is the same thing with, again, putting their names on there. Now, this is one of the things that I also use too, because we had the body camera footage for one of the cases I was working. It was one of the most beautiful things ever. The judge told me personally. Now, it wasn't my case, but he told me personally. He said, look, I can't accept it the way it's written. He said, because in certain instances, you're being vague. He said, and if it stays written like this, I'm going to have to throw it out. He has, I think they gave him 10 days to amend it. I had it amended the very next day because I used timestamps and I used certain portions of photographs. And even I made counts or made remarks regarding the dispatch logs from what the officer stated in his police report. And what was crazy, they didn't even know we had a copy of the body camera. Because just because I seem like I don't like police. I speak highly of my brothers. I speak highly of my friends. I even talked about the officers game. So I have people that entrust their livelihood with me because they understand this, what I'm talking about, is correct. Yes, they understand that they're not doing good jobs. They're not out here saving the world. They're actually burning it down because the system is designed as a revenue generator and it is screwed up. So, understanding this, using timestamps, photographs, dispatch logs to expose the gaps, and even using civilian with contradicting testimony. And again, I use them differently because I would not put their names on there because I don't think everyone's there or strong enough to actually not be swayed. Let's call it that. Now, let's expose the motive why a police officer may embellish. Now, I've often spoken quotas where they are made or pressured to make an arrest or write a citation or do something that generates revenue. Now, by doing certain other instances after the fact, that shows the cover up. Now, let's say they're doing this with one type of driver or one type of person or one type of area. These are called biases, which then calls into question the legality of these actions. Now, if the officer has credibility issues, their entire case is in check. Yeah, you didn't think I was gonna leave a chess reference out of this? Are you serious? This is what I do, man. So, but understand, if the officer's credibility is in question, just like I spoke about this young man, they were actually going to railroad this dude. And when it was pointed out on Reddit that that cop, who was a bad cop, was involved in the arrest, he was let go almost immediately with no charges because the officer's credibility hinges on the case itself. And once the officer's credibility becomes trash, every arrest that that officer has been involved in can be now re-investigated and re-decided. And that's why I always tell people, whenever you see someone that was a bad cop for whatever reason, even if it's someone I haven't put up, challenge their case against you. You can actually get your case expunged because the cop was bad. If the DA was bad, because again, what we talked about, I've got another case that's coming up where I'm going to talk about the Harris County DA's office, where they were purposely overcharging people. One of the tactics I talked about them doing. And then I've got, again, there are several reasons to get your case overturned, even if it was heard a year or two ago. So understand aspects, and there are avenues available to you to get compensated and also get your record clean. Hold on, I'm actually got to drink some water now. Now, using legal tools to your advantage. Now, this is one of the things that whenever I use it, I use subpoenas as weapons in certain instances. But you'll subpoena the officer's notes or recordings. Now, I'm gonna give you $1,000 worth of game right here. I actually do this in discovery. I don't subpoena the notes. I use this as a weapon in discovery against the prosecutor, because that forces the prosecutor to not only request them, but to actually look at them. Because if there are inconsistencies and the prosecutor continues, that then becomes a malicious prosecution case. And that shows that this attorney or prosecutor is a bad prosecutor. And many officers take notes that are not in reports, so demand them in pretrial. So again, this is something you would do in discovery if you're doing a detailed discovery. Now, emotional limine. This makes or prevents the officer from making unsupported statements. He looked like he was hiding something. Now, I used in my case to make sure they could not call me anything other than by my name. They couldn't use defendant. They couldn't use, because they used all kind of crazy stuff. Because again, I have a history. So they was attempting to slide my history into the juror by the name calling. When you can't call me names and you have to refer to me as Richard, you now humanize me. But these are things where I limit the exaggerated statements from an officer. Now, jury instructions on witness credibility. Ask the court to give jury instructions reminding them officers are not presumed more truthful. Now, the request may not always be granted. Why? Because again, the judge is on the same team as the officer and the prosecutor. So keep that in mind as well. Now, introduce pattern or practice evidence. Use lawsuits, complaints, or internal affairs findings to show bias or habits. Even use arrest records. These are things that, again, most people are not paying attention to. Why? Because they're going to these attorneys for defense and they are not paying them $50K. So they are not going to do the things necessary to make sure you remain innocent. Now, just to give you an example, next week I'm going to start a series, and it's going to be the most asinine thing that you see, because I'm going to name it How to Get Away with Murder, because there are literal things in law that legally can't be binding, because again, you look at certain things, and I used to sit in courtrooms and I watched attorneys just allow it to fly. Just to give you an example, when I did the Davis v. Mississippi video, I spoke about the 9 to 12 point match that police officers and police precincts use to convict suspects. Now, the problem with that is when you use a 9 or 12 point match, your odds are 1 in 300. So if you go, let's say you take that and you go to an average size high school, you're talking about 15 different kids with a similarity that'll hit between 9 and 12 in that match. That's a lot. Versus the scientific standard is 20. Because then it becomes 1 in a billion. So that means out of 20, it might be 7 other people on the planet with a similar pattern. Just understand that. It might be 7 other people, because it goes into the literal billions when it goes into 20-point matches. So they're not looking for an exact match. And that, the practice or standard that they're using, can be challenged. Something as simple as that can be challenged. Now, there are other factors that'll go behind that, but that can be played as part of the strategy. Now, real courtroom examples. Officer number 1 claims suspect reached for his waistband, but no weapon was found, and video shows his hands visible. He just lost all credibility. Officer 2 testifies the defendant looks high to justify stop, but no drug evidence and clean toxicology. This is Tennessee, because they, in the last 2 weeks, they've actually, let me rephrase that. in the last 2 weeks, they've made known that at least 15 drivers was sober that was charged with DUI. Let me even go. They were charged and arrested for DUI, and they were sober. They had no drugs, no alcohol in their system, and the number is growing daily. One officer is up to 8. Just let that sink in. They're arresting people with no drugs or alcohol in their system and calling it driving under the influence. Many of these people went to jail. Many of these people paid bonds. Many of these people took classes, and then many of these people also lost their jobs and also pled guilty to them when they had a zero toxicology. So when people ask the stupid question, if you didn't do it, why would you admit to it? Because pressure busts pipes. And everybody ain't built to withstand pressure. Everybody's not built to withstand pressure. And this because, again, the psychology that police officers are correct. The police officer has power. The judge has power. The prosecutor has power. And you forget all of them are working for you. Yes, I pause for dramatic effect because I want that to sink in. They only have the power you give them. The second you decide that you are going to be in control of you, that's when everything starts to change for you. Now, the results, the jury sided with the defendant and the motion was granted to suppress. Now, this is not going to happen every time, but these are the things that set the groundwork for the result that you're probably going to be looking for, which is, again, compensation as well as getting your record clean. It's up to you if you want to fight back. Because I constantly tell people, if you want to fight back, that's great, but you have to know how to fight back. Because just like again, Wirecast, I've had this for years. And this, if you look at my videos doing lives, this is the first time. These are probably the cleanest videos. Hell, if you look at the videos I did last week, they don't look like this. Literally, the videos I did last week don't look like these. So understand, going through this and mastering the things that you're doing is important. And even a uniform isn't truth serum. Just because someone is wearing a police uniform, that doesn't mean they're honest. Credibility is earned, not given, and is not worn and not embedded in a badge. So challenge everything. Challenge inconsistencies. Use evidence to disprove claims. And that I can't stress enough. Use actual evidence to disprove claims. Never assume they're always believed, and make the court move count. Never just assume that just because you have the truth that they're going to believe you and it's going to count, and that you can just truth. Always understand that there's a way that is going to be received. So, thank you guys. I will see you literally in a couple hours because I got more and I appreciate it. Let's keep going. Let's keep growing. Don't forget to leave a comment. If you're looking to get in contact with me, you got my email. You can also set a consultation up with me. Just click the link. And don't forget, we still have the donations, which you can go Apple Pay, Zelle, or Cash App. Always welcome. Let's keep going. Let's keep growing because, again, I like these videos, man. And I love you guys. So, Supreme, I'm out.